Be with you in a minute. This week on Click, we'll look at a great way of downloading data piece by piece, BitTorrent. But, famous for its association with piracy, we'll ask its creator if it can repair its image. As video games grow up, we'll visit the festival that celebrates the games as art. We'll also have this week's tech news and the very best of the web in Webscape. Welcome to Click. I'm Spencer Kelly. Here's an amazing figure for you. Of all the data that flows across the internet every day, nearly a quarter of it is all the same thing, something called BitTorrent. It's a method of sharing large files between computer users, files like movies, software, and TV programs. And although it does have legitimate uses, guess what? Nearly all of the files that are swapped are illegal. Never mind the fact that large organisations like Facebook, Twitter, and the teams behind the Large Hadron Collider and the Human Genome Project use it to shift enormous amounts of data. The name BitTorrent has become synonymous with internet piracy. It is the most widely used technology for distributing copyrighted material online. Want to know how the cult TV show Breaking Bad finished? Well, 3 million people found out by downloading or torrenting illegal copies. And the most downloaded series of all time is the wildly successful HBO fantasy drama Game of Thrones. According to website Torrent Freak, it had 5.2 million illegal downloads between March and June this year. It's something that the entertainment industry has found difficult to fight because it doesn't work in the same way as traditional services which store all their downloadable content in one place. BitTorrent is a really clever way of moving large files around the net. Instead of downloading things from a central server, hundreds or even thousands of individual users each pull different parts of the file from many others who already have a copy. There's no central server, which means there's no bottleneck in the traffic to slow things down. And it also means that if these files happen to be illegal copies, there's no one place for the authorities to go to shut the thing down. There are targets though, websites which point to the illegal files. And even though these sites don't actually store the pirated content themselves, the entertainment industry has successfully managed to shut down sites like the Pirate Bay and, most recently, ISOHunt. So, who's doing what and where? Well, this is a visual representation of the illegal file sharing that goes on around the world using BitTorrent. Pirate Cinema, an art installation created by French artist Nicolas Maigret, makes the hidden activity and geography of file sharing visible. It shows a sample of illegal videos being shared in real time using BitTorrent.
We found that the amount of content being transferred over BitTorrent has increased dramatically over the last few years. In January 2013, we saw over 7 billion petabytes being transferred over BitTorrent, all of that infringing material and infringing use of BitTorrent. And there's no signs whatsoever that the number of people using BitTorrent and the amount of data being transferred over BitTorrent shows any sign of slowing whatsoever.
This amount of illegal sharing does anger a lot of content producers. Mind you, not everyone involved in the industry has such a single-minded opinion.
I see that there's two sides to this coin. If I'm being honest, I see that the illegal downloading led to a lot of people watching the series, becoming aware of the series who otherwise would not have been. So I see that in some ways the illegal downloading has helped us, certainly in terms of brand awareness.
It's the most kind of pirated show in the world. You're obviously happy. I was wondering if people were worried about that. No, it's funny. It's funny because there is a little part of you where you go, yes, we're the most pirate. And then you think about it, oh, that's really bad, isn't it?
People who do subscribe to it through the legitimate channels, I think they feel part of the team effort because of that. They feel that a bit of my money has gone towards making that crown that Joffrey's got on or something like that. I think it feels more of an inclusive thing.
And it's the rise of these legitimate, easy-to-use channels that's thought to have led to a decline in torrenting. In North America, at least, the amount of peak time internet traffic generated by BitTorrent has dropped by 2/3 in the last 5 years, from 31% in 2008 to just 9% today.
We're seeing a decline in BitTorrent traffic in North America as a proportion because of the rise of some very successful legitimate alternatives. And the main driver of that is Netflix. Netflix now takes up about 30% of all downstream peak time North American traffic, which is a huge amount. And on top of that, you've got other legitimate services like Hulu and Amazon Video, which are also taking up large amounts of bandwidth. So the share of BitTorrent traffic is actually declining.
But torrenting does remain popular in other parts of the world. And as fast as popular torrent sites like IsoHunt and the Pirate Bay are taken down, they're replaced by others. Still, BitTorrent is trying to repair its reputation. To this end, the company recently ran a billboard campaign in New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Well, the creator of BitTorrent, Bram Cohen, sat down with Richard Taylor to talk about his company's attempts to distance itself from piracy and why he understands the pirates who prefer torrents to Netflix.
The fact is that using BitTorrent, it's possible to give customers a much better experience with much less cost than has ever been possible before. And it's really not being utilized properly, and it's really unfortunate.
It's not necessarily about a better experience, but certainly it provides a lot of anonymity, arguably, for users to be able to share copyrighted material.
Well, no, I disagree. So, like, I occasionally watch stuff on Netflix. I actually don't have a TV at home myself, but I do watch stuff on Netflix, and I find it very frustrating because the video quality is really terrible. And I really go out of my way to not do the slightest hint of pirating anything ever. But if I were just some nobody who didn't know about copyright or anything like that, my guess is I would probably pirate some of the stuff that I can watch on Netflix that I've already paid to be able to watch on Netflix, just because I'd like to watch it in higher resolution.
It's built to be seen.
BitTorrent is now making a concerted effort to ensure artists are rewarded for their creative endeavours. The idea behind BitTorrent bundles is that creators freely share some content through the network, but include other content which fans can only unlock by actively engaging, like entering an email address, which can be used for marketing. I suppose some people would say if you'd done this a long time ago, you wouldn't have gained the reputation that you have of being the site that, or the technology that facilitates piracy. Could you have coded something like this into the technology many years ago?
Well, we've tried a number of different ways of working with people and stuff. You know, we did Hollywood deals a few years ago that didn't really work out so well.
I guess you have a bit of a brand problem with Hollywood, though.
Yes. We're treated as hostile actors frequently when we're trying to work with people, although we've never been sued, so that's good.
Why is that, do you think?
Because we're technology vendors,
right.
And also...
So you're just the plumbing, basically.
Yeah, and also I've never been like rah-rah piracy, which
right.
A lot of people want me to be that way.
Right.
But a little bit of context here. When I created BitTorrent, I was literally a guy who no one had heard of sitting in his living room in his underwear. That was like who I was. That was my budget.
One of the biggest problems Bram Cohen is trying to solve today concerns privacy. With America's NSA reeling after the revelations about snooping on individuals' communications, the BitTorrent inventor has his sights on an NSA-proof messaging service to keep our conversations away from prying eyes and ears.
People assume when they communicate with others that they're reasonably private in what they're doing. And there's been a lot of just implicit trust in third parties to do this, you know, like when
which we now know has been violated.
Right, so that's the issue, is there's this fabulous public key encryption technology which really makes it possible to make it impossible for anyone else to snoop in on what you're doing.
Is this an expression of some libertarian principle that you inherently believe in?
In the case of personal communications, this gets to be kind of a complicated issue, right? sometimes law enforcement needs to do things. Sometimes law enforcement does need to come in and spy on people, basically.
Okay, so there's some areas clearly that are suitable for regulation.
Well, for law enforcement.
For law enforcement.
So
does infringement of copyright fall into that category in your own mind?
Well, copyright infringement is not a crime in the way that beating someone up is a crime, or stealing something is a crime. Stealing an actual physical good from a store is a crime. It's something else.
Finally, what would you like your legacy to be? Would you like to go down as a guy who created a hugely disruptive, world-changing technology?
I'd still like to do something in a space that I feel is, in some sense, more important than entertainment. I'd like to do something in, like, I don't know, power generation or industry, like manufacturing. I'm interested in 3D printing, things like that. So I don't think my work is done.
Richard Taylor talking to Bram Cohen, creator of BitTorrents. This is always a hot topic. We would love to get your thoughts on it. Our email address is click@bbc.co.uk. Okay, next up, a look at this week's tech news. Apple's revealed how many times governments around the world have requested information about its users. Topping the list was the US government, which requested information on between 2,000 and 3,000 Apple accounts in the 6 months to June. The company released data in response in up to 1,000 of these cases. US law prohibits it from disclosing more precise information. The governments of the UK, Spain, Germany and Australia all featured in the top 5 list of those seeking information on Apple users. India has successfully launched its first unmanned mission to Mars. There were cheers as a rocket blasted off from a launch facility in the Bay of Bengal, carrying a scientific probe. If all goes to plan, the spacecraft will reach its destination in September next year and will orbit the red planet looking for signs that it could support life. And you've heard of crowdsourcing, crowdfunding and crowdworking, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Researchers studying the effects of climate change are asking net denizens to watch Explore.org's live polar bear webcams around the clock. They're hoping the increased eyeball count will help them spot interesting events, which viewers can flag up using the screenshot and tagging features. Watch polar bears for research purposes, you say? Well, if I must. The entertainment industry loves its festivals. Film fans flock to Cannes in the south of France and Sundance in the United States. Music and art fans have thousands of festivals around the world to choose from. And now the video games industry has a festival of its own. It's called Game City, and it celebrates games as more than just an adolescent diversion. It also eschews the beaches of the Côte d'Azur or the mountains of Utah. Its home is Robin Hood country, Nottingham in the UK, which is where we find Mark Chislak. Fortunately, not wearing tights.
A fireworks display with a difference. These fireworks are entirely digital and controlled by their audience, who bash away at white orbs, triggering a motion sensor which launches different pixelated pyrotechnics, culminating in a giant game of Space Invaders and the launch of the 8th annual Game City.
The Game City Festival in Nottingham is kind of unusual for a video games event, most of which look and sound like this. This festival, on the other hand, is far more concerned with the cultural impacts and potential of video games beyond commercial concerns, evidenced by this game behind me, which involves people shouting as loudly as they can.
This game, where players make as much racket as possible at key moments to defeat their opponent, is typical of the innovative approach that indie developers have adopted for this event, which treats video games far more as an art form than a commodity. The festival itself is organised with the help of Nottingham Trent University.
The key thing that we try and remember is that games are made by people. Right? And it's weird, it's the biggest cultural industry in the world, it's one of the fastest growing creative media industries in the world, but unlike other creative industries, you know who the guys in the band are, you know the actors in the film are, or the director of it, but video games, it's really quite rare that you know the human beings that made them. So the key thing that Game City is about is exposing that fact that games are made by people.
For the 7-day duration of the festival, indie developers and games design students rub shoulders with industry legends and discuss and play games and interactive experiences which challenge what a video game is capable of.
When somebody says to me, old maps, exciting interactive experience isn't the first thing that pops into my mind. But that's exactly the cartographic gauntlet which has been laid down by the British Library to several different groups of young developers as they engage in the Off the Map competition.
The British Library provided the maps from its archive of 4 million, and games developer Crytek provided games design students with the tools to create virtual worlds via its CryEngine software. The students combined the cartography and the game engine to bring these sometimes ancient maps to life.
Games are virtual worlds, and virtual worlds are maps in their own right. We have a lot of maps in the British Library. What we're interested to see was how this gaming engine transformed a two-dimensional flat piece of paper with an image on it into a 3D immersive world.
6 teams competed against one another, with the winning entry courtesy of De Montfort University in Leicester. Their effort allows the player to explore a pre-Great Fire of London version of Pudding Lane.
It just had so much story. It was just rich with history and different elements and dynamics, and the actual size of it, of course, was a real challenge, but then also getting across all that history and the characters and the streets and the story that London has to tell. We wanted to get that across visually.
Other stories are being told at Game City which aren't so visual.
There is a way back for you to the world of the living.
As well as up-and-coming students, established indie developers take part in this festival, often presenting unusual games in very unusual or unexpected environments.
I'm underneath Nottingham in the dungeons in the galleries of justice, not because I've been a naughty boy, but because I'm here to play a new smartphone game. It's a game that forces the player not to rely on their eyes, but to rely on their ears. That's because it's a title driven entirely by sound. What was that?
Papa Sangre 2 makes use of actor Sean Bean's vocal talents to spin a yarn which sees the player journey through limbo in an attempt to return to the land of the living.
Brace yourself.
It's spooky and atmospheric. The game's graphics exist purely for rudimentary navigation and movement. Everything else unfolds entirely through the narration of the actor, formerly known as Ned Stark.
Nod if you can hear me. No clap.
So your mind, I believe, has the best graphics, and what you don't have allows you to fill in all the gaps, and particularly this works really well with horror and adventure.
Back above ground, an entirely different take on the shooting genre, courtesy of one of the minds behind legendary first-person shooter GoldenEye, Martin Hollis.
The way it works is 2 cameras move over the market square, each controlled by 1 player. Each player is supposed to choose someone in the market square to make a couple or a friendship, to bring 2 people together who are formerly strangers and to create a new relationship. And then those 2 selected people come back, play the game at the desk, control the cameras. It's my impression that there's enough military shooters, or the jocular term is man shooter, starring a big burly guy with a vast array of military equipment, and your series of interactions is to go up to people and kill them repeatedly again and again and again. I appreciate there's a wide range of people who enjoy that. For me personally, I'm creatively inspired to make new interactions and new kinds of entertainment.
Whether it's using games technology in education or for entertainment, this festival is an excellent example of the growing maturity of the games industry.
Games as Art with Mark Chislak, and a refreshing take on an industry which is often discussed in terms of its negative social impacts, with claims that games like the recently released Call of Duty Ghosts and GTA 5 desensitise us to violence and promote criminal activity. In fact, Kate Russell has another take on the power of gaming for good next in Webscape.
The debate about green issues rages on, but one thing's for sure, if the world does run out of natural resources, it's going to change everything, and not in a good way. That's the message behind a Facebook game, Recharge, which is set in a not too distant future and aims to teach players about the importance of sustainable energy.
The driving creative force behind the game is rock group Linkin Park. They've been involved in the clean energy movement since 2005, when they founded Music for Relief, a charity that helps those affected by natural disasters and promotes the use of cleaner energy.
A top-down puzzler and shooter, Recharge is a fun and engaging game, whatever your view on sustainable energy. Combining the appeal of gaming with Linkin Park's typical fan base, it's an initiative that seems bound to capture the imagination of the younger generation. And if today's rising energy prices give you sleepless nights, how about trying a sleep tracking app?
And so to sleep again.
Sleep Time is free on iOS and Android and will monitor your movement so you can build up a picture of how well you're sleeping. There's a soothing soundscape to help you drift off and plenty of tips about how to get a better night's rest.
You need to sleep with your phone resting on your bed so the app can pick up any movement. That's how it knows when you're in deep and light sleep cycles. Set the smart alarm and the app will wake you up gently when you're not in deep sleep, rather than just ripping you out of your dreams at a set time.
Another interesting app is Sleepbot. Free on Android, it does all the sleep tracking and smart alarm stuff, but will also kick into audio record mode if you get very restless, which could reveal if you're snoring or talking in your sleep.
And so to sleep again.
Photography fans will love this next site, Photor, that has a huge range of filters and other editing tools for you to snazz up your snaps. Use in the browser or download the apps for iOS, Android or Windows Phone, also for Windows Desktop and Mac. Then you can get creative editing your snaps and building beautiful collages to share with your friends.
One of the features I love is the ability to create HDR images, or high dynamic range. It's a striking visual effect that photographers like Trey Ratcliffe have really perfected. It's where they take several different shots of the same frame at different exposures before combining them to get the maximum detail out of all the light and shaded parts of the shot.
You'll need a camera that can take the range of shots. It'll be called something like auto bracketing mode or auto exposure mode. Then just load them up into the site and it will auto process for stunning results. The tilt shift filter is another great look if you want to make a striking image. Google's new marketplace for experts, Helpouts, launched this week. It connects users through video chat with experts in subjects ranging from yoga to guitar.
Your middle finger on the second fret of the D string.
Tutors are all vetted and they get to set their own fees, with Google taking a 20% cut. The service is available online through Google Hangouts and as an Android app, with an iOS version in the pipeline.
Kate Russell's Webscape, and if you miss those links, you'll find them all at our website, bbc.co.uk/click, along with lots of clips of previous programmes and the very latest tech news too. You can get in touch with us if you like. Email click@bbc.co.uk, or you can find us on Twitter, Google+, and Facebook too. But that is it for now, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.